Right. Hello, everyone. So before we get started, I just want to show off the SIGPwny website a bit. So if you go to SIGPwny.com, you click on meetings, you can see all the previous meetings. So they'll be listed down here underneath Fall 25. And you'll also see all the live and upcoming meetings here. So we filled it out for like next week or two in advance. And you can see here that the intro to the terminal setup meeting is live. And if you need to follow along, you can access the slides here by clicking down the slides or by scrolling the PDF here. This will be helpful in case you want to access some of the commands that we're going to talk about. Yeah, I will now hand it off to Suchit and Cameron.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Cameron.
And I'm Suchit.
And today we're going to be presenting Intro to Terminal and Setup.
So my name is Suchit. I'm a current helper at SIGPwny. I'm in the MCS CS program at UIUC. And fun fact about me is I'm a black belt in Taekwondo from high school. So
Hello, I'm Cameron. I'm the president of SIGPwny this year. I'm a stats and CS major. I joined SIGPwny without any security experience and made my way to president. So proof that you can do that for those of you who haven't done security before. And the actual fun fact is that I can bake macarons from scratch. Did a long time ago now. All right, announcements. Full CTF registration is open. If you came to our intro meeting, hopefully you already signed up. But if you haven't, go to sigpwny.com/fullctf. Full CTF is our beginner CTF. It's a cybersecurity competition on Sunday, September 21st from 12 to 6 p.m. If you register, then you're pretty likely to get a t-shirt and a badge, but it's still first come, first serve. So register right now and make sure that you get one of those. And there's going to be free food and there's going to be recruiters from companies there. So I recommend adding it to your calendar, making sure you show up September 21st. We'll go this out. sigpwny.com/fullctf.
Not broken right now?
No, this isn't broken. I think that's a little broken. All right, yeah, here's our interested slide. We showed this at the intro meeting, but you're only allowed to attack computers that you have explicit permission to break into. So the challenges that we host, you have explicit permission to attack them. A lot of things you don't. So that's the rule of thumb. All right, this is the building. So this is our internal cybersecurity competition that runs year round. It's called Pony CTF. We say create an account right now, but unfortunately, if you go to cdiv.sigpwny.com, you'll see a Cloudflare error saying our server's down. If you've noticed, there's a campus-wide outage in the ACB where our servers are stored. So is anyone here in CS341 or another class that runs with their servers on university? Not many people, we have a younger crowd, but yeah. So right now it's down. It'll be up whenever the university decides to fix it. But we'll make a ping reminding you to make an account. I highly recommend that you get an account up once our server's back up. But yeah, no, this is relevant right now because the server's not. This isn't relevant either.
Just like you explain console.
Okay. So all of our meetings, we have a meeting flag. This is one of them. If you type this into our CTF platform under the challenge called like Intro to Terminal and Setup meeting flag, you put in this flag, you get 100 points. At the end of the semester, the people that have the most points get a prize. So there'll be other like actual cybersecurity related challenges, but we like to have one per meeting that's just rewarding you for coming or for reading the slides after the fact. But yeah, right now you can't do this. All right, so here's what we're going to present today, kind of out of order, but so we're going to explain to you what is a shell, and then also a package manager and a terminal editor. And if you were on Windows, you can see WSL. You know what a virtual machine is. We'll explain what we recommend running on, and then we'll teach you how to use a shell, and then the last thing will come in later. So yeah, what is the terminal? And this is one of our alumni routing. So it's where the things happen. At least if you're running on Linux, you know that if you're running on Windows, you might think the GUIs are where the things happen, but in this code, the terminal is where stuff happens. And yeah, here's some examples. This one is like on a Windows machine, just I think both on Linux machines. All right, if you're on, raise your hand if you're running Linux right now on your laptop. Pretty vast minority, that's fine. But I assume if you're running Linux already, you probably know all this stuff and you're gonna be sleeping through this meeting being like, why are they explaining to me what a terminal is? All right, if you're on Windows, we have two recommended routes to go down. One is Windows subsystem for Linux, like FA2025 or a virtual machine. For a lot of the stuff we run in this club, you're gonna need some variety of Linux just because all the tooling is built for Linux or Unix systems. So you'll have problems trying to run things straight on Windows. So that's why we recommend either a virtual machine running Linux or a Windows subsystem for Linux. Then Mac OS is a little bit closer to Linux. Some of you, if you raise your hand if you have a Mac. All right, a lot of you. And if you know, raise your hand if you're running an ARM Mac, so like if it starts with M, like M2, M3. All right, also most of you. Yeah, Mac OS is a little bit closer to Linux. They're both Unix systems, so how have you been used your terminal? Raise your hand if you've used a terminal before. If you're in a CS class, you've probably used it before. But you might also want a virtual machine if you need actual Linux tooling. All right, if you're on Windows, those like the vast minority, but raise your hand if you've ever opened command prompt or PowerShell. All right, a lot of you. So yeah, that's a shell too, but it works a little bit differently. I think those of you who've used Linux or Mac and Windows, you probably had the experience of typing ls into command prompt and then it not working. And then yeah, so just the tooling for PowerShell and command prompt is a little bit different. So, and because there's less support for CTF related stuff, we recommend running as little Windows as you can, which is why we have Windows subsystem for Linux. Ooh. Let's go. All right, this is the start of the actual instruction part. So if you're on Windows and you don't have WSL installed, follow these steps. Open the Microsoft Store, switch to Ubuntu, and then install it. So I'll give you some time to do that. And macOS people will just sit tight. We have more instructions for you later.
If you need help, you should raise your hand anytime during the meeting and other helpers will come help. I don't know if you set up a ticket.
Yeah, tickets are up.
Okay.
So
if you guys also want help asynchronously, we have a ticket box set up on a Discord. You might need to show all channels in order to see it, but there's a category that says site meeting, and there's a little button. There's channels called open a ticket, which you can click to create one, and then we can like help you remotely as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we have good questions. Questions?
yeah.
So I have Docker and WSL. So if I just need to use WSL or use Docker, do you care about Docker or no?
You don't need to. At least for now, you don't need to care about Docker. WSL will be fine.
Okay.
You know which directly running Ubuntu for WSL?
For the latest version, probably.
Yeah.
WSL 2, right? I think.
I have both as well. I usually do my challenges on WSL, so you should be good. Latest version of Ubuntu is good.
Just like dealing with Docker as I have, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never had issues using WSL. Yeah.
A lot of CTF challenges will use Docker because you need a very specific environment, but that is beyond the scope of the training. So you might have to get better at using Docker, but that can come with it. So,
Is everybody good? Anybody still working on it or? Okay, I'm gonna take it as it's time to move on then.
you don't need to do this, right? Otherwise, better, I think.
I think it's your compass snack, but that should be fun.
Yeah.
I think we said that.
Again, if you're having an issue installing WSL, just raise your hand or open a ticket and we'll handle them one-on-one from this point.
How many people are actually trying to install the WSL? Raise your hand, please.
Yeah, and be sure to raise your hands and ask questions, like, we have a bunch of folders we kind of sitting around. They would like to look at semester notes.
Just keep going.
Yeah. I think
This is all stuff, yourself stuff. Whatever username.
Yeah, it's also, if you're installing WSL, it's gonna have you set a root username and password, just do it. Something you will prefer, because you have to type in that password a lot.
Everyone is on macOS.
And yeah, we'll take questions as they come up. And yeah, you can download Windows Terminal. I actually really like it. I think it's a very nice looking terminal from the Microsoft Store if you don't already have it.
Alright, what you've all been waiting for, please pay attention. Now the Mac OS terminal.
All right. Yeah, if you're running Mac OS, congrats. You're much further than the Windows people, much less work to do. Just right now, open up the terminal, new command space, or however you get to your search, and then open terminal. Yeah, we do recommend you install Homebrew if you don't already have it. You just go to brew.sh. And then there should be installing instructions on that site. Yeah, Brew is just a macOS package manager that lets you install certain tools you might get quicker. All right, raise your hand if you're installing Brew right now.
It's just a weird thing. It's just the box and stuff.
Do you have any seconds?
Yeah, just straightforward.
All right, we're gonna move on. Yeah, if you want to, you can install the alternative to the emulator, iTerm 2. Again, all these slides will be up on the SIGPwny website, so if you think we're moving too fast, just want to make sure everyone gets all the information they need, and then you can go to the SIGPwny website, download the slides, and review everything if you need more time. A lot of you might already have Python installed on your laptops. So all of you open up whatever terminal you have. If you're running Windows, open WSL, and if you're running Mac, just open the terminal and run these commands to install pym. That's the Python environment manager. It lets you install different versions of Python really quickly. And we recommend you do this instead of using whatever Python version.
You don't have to check that out.
What?
Like, yeah, we're on snippet, so.
It tells you how to do it. You just copy it.
It does tell you like.
No, it like adds it to it for you.
Oh,
It like gives you a code in it.
oh, okay.
Give it a minute. This one's actually shorter.
Yeah, everyone, if you're running Windows or Mac OS or Linux, we recommend you get pym. So follow these things. If you're in Windows, you have to run this MD on two shells, so that they'll leave it up.
Oh, yes.
I guess islands in general.
Again, like something of a-
Island is just useful for depreciated projects or managing installation between different projects that require different libraries. So, yeah.
Here, move on.
Alright. Everybody, I will go over a quick Unix crash course. Navigating my process.
Yeah, so.
So here we have a diagram of basically the file system. You can see these slashes to denote root, and then we can have examples like directory A, directory B, and then you can have, directory C in this case and multiple files within it. This should be pretty basic for most of you, but this is just a refresher for anybody who doesn't know or just needs a reminder for this and hasn't worked in Unix systems before. So cd/, nice way to easily get back to your root directory. Instead of trying to traverse up your directories to get to root, you can just do cd/, get back to root. Then cd dir A, that's how you traverse from root to directory A. So your cd will start in whatever directory you've always specified, and then you can cd from that local directory to whatever you're looking for. So in this case, your current directory would have been root, and once you do cd dir A, you would have moved to directory A.
Yeah. So it's gonna be.
Alright. Then, once you do cd dir C, you can go to directory C. The critical thing here to remember is that when you cd and you don't put anything like a // or // it automatically assumes that you're in your current directory. So before you cd'd into directory A, so that is considered your current directory. And what happens is when you do use cd, you're changing your directory from your current directory to whatever you specified. So if dir C, for instance, is not in directory A, it would give you an error. But since directory C is a subfile or a subfolder of directory A, you successfully can change directory to directory C. And then now your cd starts here because you move to that directory. Okay. Now, as I was saying before, when you cd to directory B, it doesn't take it that you're in your root folder, it takes it such that you're in directory C. So if you cd to directory dir B, it'll give you an error because you can't find that in your current directory. So to solve this, we have to do cd/ directory B. cd/ will bring you back to your root directory. And then since directory B is a direct subfolder of your root directory, you can just put it initially there. And for reference, you can do cd/ directory B / file. Well, you can't cd into that, but let's say cd/ directory A / directory C to go directly into directory C's folder. And this is another way of doing it. So // is just change directory to your parent directory. Pretty basic stuff. If you looked at this before. So what you're doing is you're starting at your directory C. Your // gets you to directory A. The second // gets you to root. And then you're going to directory B and traversing to that. So because you've iterated upwards in your system, you can now see directory B and CD into it. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. If anybody's having technical difficulties with the installations or would like to know more, please raise your hand and one of our helpers or I can answer your questions. So that slash goes up to directory A, as I explained. That slash again goes back to root. And then now you can go to directory B because your root folder can see directory 10. So from here, how would you get to directory A starting at directory B? Does anybody have any ideas? I know this is pretty basic, but just play along for me for a second. Anybody? Yeah.
Directory A, directory B, correct? Could be // all.
Yeah, directory B to directory A.
// directory A.
Correct. Yes, you would just go to your parent folder, which is root, and then you can directly access directory A from there. So you can either do P/directory A, which can just go directly to root, and then go to directory A, or as you said, by the way, what was your name? Mohammed. Or you could do CD// as you said. Okay. So the absolute path is the full path, and it always starts with root, which is a slash. So you can specify the absolute path for any file. And if you have an error or something like that, saying that it cannot find the file directory, etc., you always use the absolute path to guarantee that your computer can read the right directory and look where your file is. So always with a slash and then go from there into whatever the traversal is. Your relative path is relative to where you currently are. So if you are in directory A, any files within directory A will be currently accessible to you, and you can traverse from there with a slash and go from there. So as we see in this example, it's directory C, and then you can directly call CD. You can directly call the file 1.txt without having to go through the absolute path, going through directory A to directory C to get to the file.txt. So another exercise, CD starts here in directory A, and then, okay. So CD// is just means current directory. So we know that / means your parent directory, so you're traversing back up the system to your parent directory. If you're just doing CD//, it's the same thing as saying I'm in my current directory, directory A, and then I want to CD to directory C, which is within directory A. It's the same thing basically as doing CD directory C. You don't need to add the // It is just it's just another syntax that you can potentially use. So as shown, / directory C equals to directory C, which equals to directory C slash. These are all just different syntaxes based off your preference or based off your memory. If you like remembering .. and .. feel free to use that. If you're just using directory C, go ahead and use that. And you can get a little funky with this. You can basically you can chain as many // as you want. It'll just keep you in your current directory. So it's a little redundant, but it might be fun if you want to try it out. So what the special symbols is going on here? Every directory has a special dot and dot files for the current directory and the parent directory. So piping, that symbol that you see there, is to send information from one process to another. Redirections are to send output. Let's say you want to file the output of a process to another like TXT file or something. There's job control. And the shell is basically very powerful, so you can code stuff in your terminal to execute tasks for you directly through the terminal. Wildcards, little patterns like the asterisk and question mark and cache can match multiple files to one another. So if you've ever seen like a dot / or and then a question mark, it'll try to match whatever file that you're trying to traverse to and see the directory at that point. So basically, you're getting a computer to look for what folder you're trying to CD into for you. So export environment values sets the variable in your environment, and you need to add it to squiggly /bash.c to make it persistent. This make means that even for restart your computer, it's still there. So useful commands, ls lists everything in your current directory. cd is just changing your directory. Moving is to move files from the source to whatever your destination is. And then if the destination is a directory, you have to use move source. So remove is to remove files. Remember, this is not reversible. If any of your friends try to troll you, do not move any system files. Do not recursively remove stuff. Do not let somebody change your OS for you.
They should talk about form levels.
Yeah, basically, make sure you actually want to remove what you're trying to remove, or you may end up deleting some very valuable stuff that you cannot recover. Cat is just to open a file. So if you cat a txt file, for example, that says hello world, you will just see hello world appear on your terminal screen. You can try this. You can define like a txt file, cat it, and you'll see this text. Then /file. This is pretty important. It'll execute whatever is at the file. So you can look at how programs get run for a deep dive on how this actually works, but it's just basically executing an executable file, which redundant, but. And your best friend, if you're trying to figure out a command, raise their hand. Yeah. Demand commands will basically let you see info about a command. It's short for manual and all the parameters and options. So when you see how do I say it? The less than or greater than sign around a parameter, that means it's a required parameter, and you have to fill that in with the correct format. So you don't just put like, less than sign, parameter, greater than sign. You would have to actually fill that in with like whatever you wanted. Like let's say -I, for example. So again, useful command for networking. NC is to netcat. This is useful for your phone challenges because you want to access a server that'll host the challenges. So netcat will connect to an IP, host name, and on a specified port. So you see how you can specify the IP and you can specify the port, specify those, connect to the server, and do your challenge. Now, SSH is secure shell, so you can run a shell as a user on a host, and you can specify an SSH key so you don't have to type in your password every time. It gets very annoying to type in your password every time. Please set up SSH keys for yourself. Pinging, you can ping an IP to see if an IP address is up using ICMP. This can sometimes be blocked by firewalls, but it's usually pretty good. Basically, this is just to check if your network is working fine. You'll ping it to see if you can, if you have internet access and stuff like that, or if you can generally reach an IP. So curl is a network access tool that's used to access websites from the terminal. And then wget downloads the file at the URL. So yes.
What's the difference between netcat and SSH?
Netcat and SSH. So
netcat is unencrypted and it just does a plain TCP connection. And then SSH is going to do an encrypted connection. And in order for you to SSH into something, the server needs to be running an SSH service. So SSH is very specific to a server that you're trying to connect to. And that offers like remote access to that server. But netcat is a little bit more versatile and lets you access any sort of TCP.
any other questions or? So networking fundamentals. So you netcat, I've said this already. NC/L will open a network socket to listen on the port. So this is just for listening to whatever that specific port communicates with you. And remember, some ports are obviously reserved for other programs, so make sure you can actually use a port that is available to you. So the next steps are banded. We had some old banded challenges on the SIGPwny CTF site. However, they are currently not working, and the actual website isn't working either. So yeah. Banded, however, itself is like an online platform where you can learn these fundamentals. So you should definitely check it out. I actually used it. It was quite useful in getting inundated with this sort of stuff. And the challenges get progressively harder, so it's not very basic stuff. It can progress to, decently challenging stuff if you're looking for that. So again, it's the command, the user is banded 0. This is the IP or the host name, and then it's specifying the port to connect to, just tying back what we were learning in this. All right. Next step. So terminal challenges. Netcat is your best friend to connect to those. Shell basics. So learning how to use terminal is extremely useful for just moderating tasks and not just having to interact with the GUI. And then the intro to ASCII table and netcat. So they're just special characters you want to get used to as a programmer in the terminal that can do specific commands and can make your life easier.
These terminal challenges are on SIGPwny and FA2025. When it goes back up, you can look at the challenges on the platform there, and then get yourself a little bit more familiar with the terminal.
All right, so you should already know about most of these resources, but again, all of our meetings are saved at sigpwny.com/meetings. So if you ever want to go back on these slides and read something again, go to that site. And then of course we have an app developed in Discord and also a channel for tickets for this meeting. So feel free to use any of those on Discord. So and then you can't actually click these links, but when we upload the slides, then the slides are up. So if you download them, you can find the slide and click on these links to look at these other resources. But they just tell you more about the Linux command line and how to use a Linux machine for programming and for cybersecurity in general.
So if you have any questions or issues, we are here to help. Please ask your friendly neighborhood helper or an admin, and you can also do the hashtag ask for help in the SIGPwny Discord, and you can also open a ticket like Min was saying earlier. Please, if you're having trouble, first initially try to look up helpful tricks and tips online. Working through a problem yourself is actually a great way to actually learn about it before asking for help, and it'll allow you to understand the right question to ask in certain cases.
Right, so we're not quite finished yet. We're going to go through some troubleshooting steps live with you guys right now, because there may have been a bit of confusion related to some of the steps. But let me get this up. Let's bring up the terminal here. Okay. All right. Okay, so your terminal probably won't look like this. Mine looks pretty fancy because I have some nice themes applied. But right now I'm actually in PowerShell. So if I were to run ls like the Linux command, it would not work because that's not the correct command. But if I run ls, that's going to fail. Oh, PowerShell has an alias for ls, which is why that works. RM does work. Yeah, so PowerShell has alleviated some of the issues with WSL with Linux users switching between Windows by adding aliases for commands. But we're going to switch it to WSL, which you can access by typing WSL whenever this boots up. WSL might start a little bit slowly if you haven't opened it in a while. That's to save system resources, so you're not essentially running the Linux kernel while you're using Windows. If it starts up. when does it start? So,
You can just open the one too, that's all the-
yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay, I'm also going to go to Bash. So everything looks a little bit clearer now. Okay. Yeah. So, if you're running Windows, or if you're trying to install Python earlier, we'd recommended that you install pyenv. Well, as a hindsight, that probably wasn't the greatest move. The reason why we asked you to install pyenv is because later on in the future, when you do future classes or new releases of Python comes out, it's going to be a lot more difficult to manage which Python version that you're using. So we recommended that you install pyenv just because you can easily switch between Python versions. And this will be important later on when you're doing classes where they might require a specific Python version. But just to sort of keep things a little bit simpler, you can install Python using your system package manager. So if you use sudo apt install python 3.12, this should install Python 3.12 onto your system. And this is basically your operating system managing Python for you. So apt is the package manager for Ubuntu and WSL. If you're on Mac, you'll probably be through installing Python instead. So I don't have those resources available for you right now. But you can also check those out in online resources in terms of installing pyenv. But you'll have Python installed if you can type Python 3. And when you type Python 3, it'll tell you the current version of Python you have installed. And it will drop you into the Python interpreter. And so you can run code like print hello. And Python will run that command, that Python code for you. And if you want to quit this, you would type quit with parentheses, and it will drop you back to your bash shell. Yeah, so for those of you on Ubuntu, or if you're running WSL, I would recommend just installing Python 3.12 from scratch. And later on in the future, if you do have to upgrade Python versions, what you can do is you can install the latest version of Python and remove Python 3.12 if you don't want it anymore. Sorry? So actually, the latest version of Python is 3.13. So you can technically have both multiple versions of Python installed. Actually, Python 3.13 is not out yet on package manager. Yeah, but you can install like an older version. No? Okay. I guess it's just 3.12 on the package manager. Usually, if you want to install other versions of Python, you have to add some other repositories that'll let you get access to those. That's up for you to discover in your free time. But
So pyenv is for.
yeah, this is really what pyenv is for, to let you install specific and older versions of Python. But for the vast majority of things, working with the latest version of Python is usually the move.
Not always though.
Yeah.
I've done several secret challenges where you need a very specific font.
Yeah. When the opportunity comes up, we'll run through it. Somebody also posted instructions on installing pyenv, which if you check the Discord general channel, I put a link there. So you can also follow those instructions as well. I believe you need to install some system packages in order to get pyenv to work. So you can follow those and hopefully get pyenv installed. Otherwise, the system package of Python will work fine. And now we're going to do a little bit of a fun activity. Basically, we're going to be using some of the commands that we just talked about here, and we're going to do some network connections. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use PowerShell to do this because WSL will not have access to the networking stack on Windows directly. But if I do ipconfig, and let's see here. Where's my wireless adapter? Okay, here's my IP address, guys. So I'll also put this into a notepad so you guys can see this a little bit easier.
You would go back.
I'll go ahead and you guys connect to my my little window here. So boom, 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 boom. And I'm going to start a Python a netcat session on my machine. So earlier we mentioned a netcat command. So the -L flag will tell it to listen, and I will listen onto the port. What do I have open? 25565. So if you guys can figure out how to connect to my machine right now, you can send some messages onto the screen. And let me also just put this up. Let me also just confirm my firewall.
I'm going to do this.
Guys. All right. So this is my IP. This is the port of the service. So if you guys open WSL and do NCIP and then that, if you type this command, you should be able to connect to my session. Say hi. I don't see any. There might be network isolation, but usually. It adds isolation. I don't think that. Nobody is connected. We're actually going to try doing this on PowerShell instead.
Yes.
No, okay. Oh my gosh.
Bro.
Hold on.
Is it a firewall thing or is it
I have it whitelisted on my local. So it should work fine.
See, this is like just be roughly.
No, I think there's network firewalls on Windows, so it's not going to work.
I mean, what else?
I have signed up installed. Okay, what we're going to do. Wait, this isn't really working anymore, so.
It's man's even worse. Oh, you have to manually put like
No, you don't need to do that. Let's see. And I will run that's again.
Yeah, I see
that again.
25565. Oh, it's not there. Okay, well, no, explain it. I don't actually know how to set up a port for from WSL to Windows, but.
You have like a way to use the system. Try not running. WSL settings. Try not running.
Oh, you know, I can just use
Verify the IP.
let's see here. Let's make directory HP. Oh, hello. Okay. Let's connect to my web server. instead. So we'll practice using the curl command. So if you guys curl 8000 and /test.txt, you can visit my web server.
Yeah.
I wonder if they actually just did implement firewall. We did this with the national server before, but we don't have the server right now, so. Okay, network segmentation is probably blocks again, so. Yeah. Normally Illinois net is before you select network segments, but. Okay, does anyone have any questions in terms of getting your network or your machine set up? You can raise your hand and we can help you out.
Being responsible.
Wait, what is that?
Alright. Fun, I need to. I mean, to be fair, it's down to be very. But it's still like, even though I have no way to basic. Yeah, hey, I was getting responsible. I just also happened for running family. He said that my things are big. Yeah.
So I just feel like thank you for coming. Thank you guys once again for coming and have a great rest of your week.
Next meetings, this Saturday, we have our first social. So if you come to the quad, right in front of the Illinois Union, we'll be there. We'll have shops and board games. So come out, have some fun, and meet the rest of us. And then this Sunday, we will be running Webpacking 1 with Cameron and some of us. So we'll teach you guys the basics of webpacking. Make sure to come. You don't need to have your computer fully set up in order to participate in Webpacking 1. So even if you were struggling a little bit with this meeting, you don't need to have everything set up for this first meeting. So feel free to come out.